Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Nezumi Corbeau reference CQ4.202. This watch is available from NezumiStudios.com for €562. Nezumi are a well-established microbrand. They were founded in 2011 and they're based in Stockholm in Sweden. Their watches are assembled in Germany. Also, the quality control inspection and the regulation of the calibers they're using takes place in Germany. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is housed inside this outer cardboard box, and as you can see on the reverse we have the reference number of the piece and the manufacture year 2025, and it also states assembled in Germany. So as I've detailed, Nezumi are based in Stockholm in Sweden, but however their watches are assembled in Germany. So one removes the watch box from the outer box, and as you can see it's protected in shipping very well with this fabric. This is the watch box itself. Plastic watch box which is coated to a good standard with vinyl or PU leather with an aesthetically pleasing cream grained finish to it. And on the top of the hinge lid we have the Nezumi brand emblem embossed to a good standard. Hinge lid is well executed and the interior is fully upholstered with contrasting yellow velour fabric to a good standard, and the watch sits in the base on a padded pillow cushion. Padded pillow cushion is also upholstered to a good standard with contrasting yellow velour fabric, and it's a good snug fit in the base. So good quality watch box, also good attention to detail because the base is lined with a felt panel. This is good because it prevents the watch box scuffing or scratching a polished or lacquered desktop or tabletop, and it also prevents the watch box from sliding around on a polished surface. So good attention to detail, good quality finishing. This is an example to other mid-tier microbrands of how to get presentation correct. To clarify, mid-tier is €500 to €5,000 price point, and this is an excellent watch box at the €562 price point, and they deserve credit for that. With regards to items that come with the piece, one only gets one piece, which is this fold-out leaflet, and as you can see it says thank you for your order, details the warranty number and also the date of purchase, and we've also got the website NezumiStudios.com and the contact for their socials at Nezumi Studios. And in the underside it says French for crow because Corbeau means crow in French, and it also details the specification of the piece. On the reverse it details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty. I want to give due credit to Nezumi here because often mid-tier microbrands only cover their watches with a 12-month international warranty. To get 2 years of international warranty at the €562 price point is excellent. Good to see the terms and conditions of the warranty detailed, and also the contact email for customer services if you want to make a warranty claim, info@nezumistudios.com. Now there's only one thing that's absent from this piece which is notable, and that is an owner's instruction manual in the form of a printed booklet with clear concise diagrams, instructions in English detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber VK63 Mecha Quartz. As an alternative to a printed owner's instruction manual booklet, Nezumi could simply use a plastic warranty card and have a QR code on it, so one could scan the QR code to activate the 2-year warranty, and on the reverse it could have another QR code which could be scanned with an Android or iPhone to download the owner's instruction manual with clear concise diagrams and instructions in English. At this price point in the mid-tier, €562, it is mandatory to have both a warranty card and also an owner's instruction manual. There is room for improvement on that. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 12.8mm and a lug width of 20mm. The Jubilee style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push micro adjustment clasp. Now I'm going to be critical of this because this is a 40mm head of the piece, and you'll know from my previous reviews, for a 40mm I consider 20 to 16 perfection personified. It is the industry standard for good reason. So to clarify, there are 2 industry standard tapers on bracelets regardless of whether they are an oyster style bracelet, Jubilee style bracelet or beads of rice style bracelet respectively. 22 to 18 is one industry standard for larger pieces of 41 or 42mm. For 39 and 40mm head of pieces, the standard industry size is 20 to 16, which is perfection personified. This is 20 to 18, which is not as common. Now, subjectively, one can be critical of this because it does add significant meat to the bracelet and it looks more straight and parallel versus the more aggressive taper of 20 to 16. However, some collectors might like that because it's Jubilee style. I want to give due credit to them with regards to finishing, because they've made the correct decision by brushed satin finishing the centre links of the Jubilee style bracelet rather than mirror polishing, because that would give the piece a dress watch aesthetic rather like a Rolex Datejust Jubilee bracelet. And I think they've made the correct decision by brushed satin finishing the flanks versus mirror polishing, and brushed satin finishing the centre links in the Jubilee style bracelet. It gives the Jubilee style bracelet more of a tool watch aesthetic or a vintage aesthetic versus a dress piece aesthetic as per a Datejust Jubilee bracelet. Just a shame they didn't use the Perfection Personified 20-16 taper. 2-button push micro adjustment clasp is correctly proportioned. The 2 triggers are brushed satin finished and finished to a good standard, no sharp edges, no burrs. Beautiful luster to the longitudinal brushed satin finishing, and the Nezumi emblem in the hex is embossed to a good standard, well finished. The flanks are brushed satin finished to a good standard, that complements the brushed satin finishing to the body, and the large bevels are also brushed satin finish to a good standard, so very aesthetically pleasing. They've made the correct decision with regards to the finishing to the head of the piece, the bracelet and the clasp all being brushed satin finished versus mirror polished, because there's good continuity of design, good continuity of finishing. Proportions are very good, curvature is good, no sharp undercuts to the flanks, doesn't have a sharp top edge or low edge, and the 4 corners have been deburred and chamfered very well. Very aesthetically pleasing micro adjustment clasp with 10mm of on the fly adjustment with a ratcheting mechanism, which I'll test. We have a box double dome top hat profile crystal, and it has clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the box top hat double dome sapphire crystal. Nice profile to it. It does add 2mm of thickness to the head of the piece, but it still is only 12.8, which is very low profile, and that's the benefit of this being powered by the Seiko caliber VK63 Mecha Quartz. It's a thin caliber, and therefore the thickness of this piece is low profile. It's only 12.8. Coin edge bezel is low profile, and we have a ceramic bezel insert with 12-hour markers on it. So this can be used for a second time zone. You can set the hour hand to the 12 hours on the bezel, and it's 120 click unidirectional bezel. Coin edge finishing is brushed satin finish versus being mirror polished, and again they've made the correct decision. Often mid-tier microbrands make the mistake of a clash with regards to the finishing of the bezel, the head of the piece and the bracelet and clasp, but what we have here is continuity of finishing, continuity of design, because we have brushed satin finishing to the bezel, which matches the brushed satin finishing to the crown. Also the head of the piece is brushed satin finished, and also the bracelet centre links and the flanks, as I've detailed, are not mirror polished. Often the case with Jubilee style bracelets is the centre links are mirror polished, the flanks are mirror polished, and then, of course that clashes with the brushed satin finishing to the flanks on the case, the bezel and the crown. So good quality finishing, good quality matching. I like the twisted lyre lugs, which are rather like an Amiga Speedmaster. They add interest to the case, and the finishing to the lyre lugs or twisted lugs is very good. Brushed satin finish on every facet, the inner portion, outer portion, and the large bevels, which run the full length of the case. So quality of the brushed satin finishing has a nice fine grained finish to it, beautiful luster to it on the flanks, nice large undercut to the flanks, and also it's been chamfered very well, so that deletes the sharp edge, and we don't have any sharp points to the 4 corners of the tips of the lugs because they're beveled. Very nice bevel on the lyre lugs, and proportions of the lugs are correct. Nice twisted lyre lug profile. So, nice symmetry to the dial with the absence of a date complication. Now, subjectively, one can be critical of this because it's powered by the Seiko caliber VK63 Mecha Quartz, which is a date complication chronograph. Now, they haven't utilised that because this doesn't have a date window or a date complication at 4 o'clock, for example. Often VK63 pieces do have, but however, I prefer the symmetry of the 9, 6 and 3 subdials, and it's a symmetrical dial versus asymmetrical, and I like the absence of the date complication, which would spoil the symmetry of the dial. Proportions of the subdials are good, and they contrast very well with the black dial. The Arabic numerals are also correctly proportioned, and I like that they haven't cut off too much of the portions of the 10 Arabic numerals, 2, 4 and 8. Often with chronograph pieces that use Arabic numerals on the dial for the 12 hours, they cut off too much. The portion that is cut off by the subdials is too great, and therefore one can't clearly read the Arabic numerals beneath the subdials. This is good. You can still read the 10, 2, 4 and 8 Arabic numerals clearly, and I like the symmetry of the dial. Layout is very good. It's clean. It's not overbranded with unnecessary text or specification. Just bear with me. I'm going to move the minute hand out of the way and you'll see the text better. We simply have the printed Nezumi hex emblem at 12 o'clock, Nezumi Stockholm, because the brand is based in Stockholm in Sweden, and then above the 6 o'clock subdial we have Corbeau, which, as I've detailed, in French Corbeau means crow. So minimalists, we don't have the water resistance rating, we don't have negligible information. The dial isn't too busy, it's not too cluttered, the legibility is good as a result. White minute ticks on the chaptering are printed with high definition printing, and the Arabic numerals for the minutes at 0, 5, 10, 15, 20 and so on. They're also printed very well in patina X1 superluminova, which matches the large Arabic numerals for the 12 hours in patina X1 superluminova. Good colour tone match between the printing of the Arabic numerals on the chaptering, the 12-hour Arabic numerals, the hands. The dial and the hands match very well. Same patina tone to the X1 superluminova on the dial and hands. It's good. Hands are correctly proportioned. They're pencil hands, both for the minute hand and the hour hand. And we've got a contrasting arrowhead tip to the chronograph hand in yellow. So it does look very aesthetically pleasing. Also on the 9 o'clock subdial, we have an yellow contrasting arrowhead tip to the subdial hand. So legibility is good. I like it, so I think the dial layout is good, the proportions of the indices are good, and the colour tone match is good of the Lume. So let's test the bezel execution. Coin edge finished bezel, solid 316L grade stainless steel, ceramic bezel insert with 12-hour Arabic numerals and 12-hour markers, 120 click unidirectional bezel, rather like a dive bezel. Feels smooth, light resistance to it, doesn't feel medium or firm, feels light. No lateral side-to-side play, which is good. No back play, so although it's light resistance rather than medium or firm, it does feel nice and tight, and I'm glad there's no lateral side-to-side play or back play. So let's just check the alignments. Feels smooth, feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, doesn't get lighter or heavier, which is good. One more click. Perfect. The 12 Arabic numerals perfectly aligned with the 12 Arabic numerals on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chaptering, so alignment is correct. Nice, smooth feeling to it. Doesn't feel rough or gritty. One can feel the click spring engaging beneath the coin edge bezel with 120 grooves machined into it. And I like it. Light resistance, but feels smooth, even all the way through the 360 degrees. They've got the balance correct. And this is the benefit of this piece not being made in China. It is assembled in Germany. The quality control takes place in Germany. That's the benefit. The quality control is higher as a result. The ceramic bezel insert has a matte black tone to it, which I like, versus the glossy enamel-like finish to most ceramic bezel inserts. It does give a vintage aesthetic. It does look rather like an anodized aluminium bezel insert, but of course ceramic is harder and more scratch resistant. That's the benefit. Crown is coin edge finished, and also I want to give credit to Nezumi because, as I've detailed, we don't have a clash of finishes between the bezel and the crown. Bezel is matte satin finished, coin edge finished. The crown is also coin edge finished and matte rather than being mirror polished, and it's engraved with the Nezumi hex emblem to a good standard. Nice large chamfer which deletes the tips of the teeth, of the coin edge teeth, and therefore doesn't feel sharp, but it is grippy and tactile, and it's correctly proportioned. It's easy to get purchased with your index finger and thumb. It's a push-pull crown versus a screw-down crown, but I'm not going to be critical of that because 50 metres of hermetic seal is perfectly acceptable for a chronograph or daily wear piece. This isn't a dive piece, therefore it doesn't need a screw-down crown and 100 metres, for example. 50 metres on a push-pull crown is acceptable. Two pushers are solid 316L grade stainless steel, concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the domed caps, and they are correctly proportioned. And I like the proportions and the finishing of the satin finishing to the pushers and the satin finishing to the crown. So pulling it out to the first click position is the phantom date setting position. So as I've detailed, subjectively, this is the negative. The Calibre VK63 Mecha Quartz does have a date complication. The date wheel is still present beneath the dial, hasn't been deleted, but we don't have a date complication. There's no date window at 4 o'clock, for example. So the first click, when you rotate the crown, you can feel the date wheel clicking over beneath the dial. Putting it out to the second click position hacks the movements, and if you look at the subdial at 6 o'clock, you can see the second subdial has now stopped dead, so therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the Calibre VK63. So we're now in the time setting position. The pencil minute hand almost immediately responds when you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise. Feels smooth both clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours to set the time. Minimal resistance to it, meshing of the gearing is good, and minimal backplay, which is desirable. Some backplay is necessary, and I often refer to this in my previous reviews, because if the meshing in the gearing did not have some backplay, some slack, The problem is when you push back in the crown, it will cause the pencil minute hand to jump out of position rather than remaining static. So it is necessary to have some back play or some slack in the teeth of the gearing, and this is acceptable because the back play is minimum. You don't have to rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise a large amount in order to take up a lot of slack. So it feels nice and tight despite having some back play which is necessary. Pushing it back in's got a nice positive click, and that reinstates the 50 meters of hermetic seal. And also you'll see on the subdial second hand it begins to tick around the subdial once again. Feels good. Feels good to hack the movement and set the time. Also feels good to pull out the crown and push it back in. Nice positive click. Let's check the chronograph complication. So pressing the top pusher activates the chronograph complication. You can see the contrasting yellow arrowhead tip to the chronograph hand begins to tick around the dial. Pushing the top pusher again stops the chronograph complication. Nice crisp action to it. It's heavily sprung loaded. This is a characteristic I really like about the VK63. It feels reliable and robust and durable long term because the pushers are heavily sprung loaded. So you've got to give them a good hard push with your index finger to activate the chronograph and also stop it. It feels crisp, it feels reliable, heavily sprung loaded. Pushing the lower pusher resets it. Bang on 60 and also bang on the 12 o'clock. I'm just going to check it 2 more times because when I test the chronograph complication, I always test it 3 out of 3 times for continuity to make sure that it resets at various points on the dial, bang on the 60 or bang on the 12 Arabic numerals on the dial. So stop it again, reset, bang on the centre of the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring, bang on the centre of the 12 Arabic numerals. I'll check it a third and final time. I'm just going to allow it to tick around the dial further, and I just want to see the alignment is correct 3 out of 3 times. Again, this is something I like about Nezumi. Their watches are not assembled in China, as I've detailed. They are assembled in Germany, and the quality control takes place in Germany, and therefore it has high quality control levels versus Chinese-made watches with low quality control levels in the mid-tier at €562. So I'm going to stop it once again and finally reset 3 out of 3 times. Perfect. 3 out of 3 times, the contrasting yellow arrowhead tip to the chronograph hand resets bang on 60 on the chapter ring, bang on the centre of the dial. Perfect. 3 out of 3 times. Excellent chronograph complication. This is what I like about the VK63. The alignment is correct 3 out of 3 times. Right, so let's look at the bracelet in detail. Jubilee style bracelet, brushed satin finish rather than having mirror polished centre links. End links articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink. That's the benefit. However, the negative is too much play. This is disappointing because one can be magnanimous about this kind of play, lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. One could be magnanimous if this were a low tier Chinese made piece, below €100. But we're looking at a mid tier piece, so to clarify, low tier is €0 to €500 price point, mid tier is €500 to €5,000 price point. At €562, it is at the lower end of the mid tier, but it is mid tier nonetheless. And this is acceptable below €100 in the low tier for Chinese made pieces. This piece is assembled in Germany with high quality control, therefore it should not have this amount of play. €562. It's sloppy. This does not say to me mid-tier piece assembled in Germany, €562. This says to me low-tier piece below €100 made in China. That's the poor quality. And this is simply caused by the holes in the end links in the bracelet being oversized, the diameter and the spring bar going through the holes being undersized. They simply need to increase the diameter of the spring bar and reduce the diameter of the holes, and that would tighten up the tolerances to interference friction fit. The benefit is it doesn't feel stiff or kink, so it articulates freely. That's good, but it's sloppy and it rattles. That's the negative. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, and there's a good amount of articulation, which is good. But again, sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down, play. Play in every single direction. This is wholly unacceptable at €562. The reason why I say it's wholly unacceptable at €562 is other mid-tier microbrands are getting it correct. They are using Jubilee style bracelets, but the refinement is there. The interference friction fit between the spring bar going through the end links is tighter. And again, this is the kind of sloppy, poor execution one expects with a Chinese-made low-tier piece below €100. One could be magnanimous. One has to be realistic and expect some kind of production cost-cutting measure. But at €562, Nezumi cannot make this kind of error. As you can see, it rattles, it's sloppy. It's disappointing. In terms of finishing, on a positive note, The Jubilee style bracelet has a beautiful lustre to the brush satin finishing, and I like that the centre links are not mirror polished. Good continuity of design, good continuity of finishing, beautiful lustre, nice fine grained satin finishing, no sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, which is good. Bracelet doesn't pull arm hairs, that's the benefit, and it doesn't feel sharp, so it doesn't scratch the wrist, it doesn't feel abrasive, that's good. Quality of the finishing is good. I just would prefer it if it had the 20-16 Perfection Personified taper. However, it rattles. This is the negative. Again, what this says to me is low tier Jubilee style bracelet made in China, below €100. And as I've detailed, if this were below €100, one could be magnanimous about a sloppy Jubilee style bracelet. This is a mid tier piece at €562. It's assembled in Germany. Quality control takes place in Germany. It's not good enough. This is the negative of using push pins in the Jubilee style bracelet. And at €562, one expects to see a mid-tier microbrand using 1.2mm screw pins in a Jubilee style bracelet. Screw pins would be a notable upgrade and beneficial because they would tighten up the tolerances. The interference friction fit of screw pins would be tighter. It would still articulate freely. This doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. But if they use screw pins, it would tighten up the play or the slack, and it wouldn't be so sloppy, as you can see. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Doesn't pull arm hairs, no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flank, so it doesn't feel sharp, that's the benefit, but sloppy. This really does remind me of a below €100 Chinese-made low-tier piece. That's the kind of play. And I wouldn't be critical of it, I would be magnanimous if this were below €100, but at €562, one cannot be magnanimous. It's sloppy, it rattles. So good that it articulates freely, but not good. It's bad that it has sloppy, too much play, and it really does need to have screw pins at this price point. Push pins are not acceptable. With regards to the clasp is good. Proportions are good, finishing is good, no sharp edges, nice large bevels which mark the transition between the brush satin finished body and the flanks. 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, they feel reliable and robust. Now unfortunately there's an embarrassing glaring error because they've engraved stainless steel upside down. It needs to be inverted. Now the reason why I say it's upside down is like so. The majority of collectors wear their piece on the left hand and therefore they take the piece off the wrist this way up. They rotate it round this way and the clasp opens from left to right, which is why the 2 button push triggers are on the left versus the right, because you press them with your right hand, index finger and thumb like so, and it opens from left to right. So this is the correct orientation for the majority of left-handed collectors using their right hand to open the clasp. That's why I say it's upside down. Stainless steel is engraved with high definition engraving, which is good, but it's inverted. They need to invert it and engrave it the correct way up because, as I've detailed, the majority of collectors will use their right hand, their index finger and thumb, to press the 2 triggers and open the clasp from left to right. Therefore, stainless steel is now upside down. This is a glaring or embarrassing error. Now, again, one could be magnanimous about this kind of fundamental error if this were a low-tier Chinese-made piece below €100, but we're looking at an assembled in Germany piece at €562. One cannot have these kind of glaring, embarrassing errors at this price point. Let's check the hinge pins. Left-hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit, but sloppy. And again, very simple to correct, and it's disappointing that this is assembled in Germany with German quality control versus made in China with poor quality control. They simply need to drill the hole in the end link in the bracelet with a smaller diameter, and they make the pin larger diameter, and therefore that increases the interference friction fit, because as you can see, what we have here is an oversized hole in the end link in the bracelet and an undersized pin going through it, and therefore it's sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down, longitudinal play. Play in every single direction. This is not a Chinese-made €100 piece. We're looking at a German assembled piece, which is €562. Sloppy. Let's check the centre hinge pin. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Lateral side to side play, also up and down play. This is disappointing. Again, very easy to correct because Nezumi simply need to drill the holes smaller diameter and increase the diameter of the pin, which is riveted at both ends. That would tighten it up, but as it stands, it has too much play. Finally, let's check the right hand hinge pin. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, it's a spring bar. Again, excess play. Lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play, and it rattles. Cumulative effect of this is left hand, centre and right hand hinge pins have too much play. And cumulatively, all 3 pins are sloppy and therefore the solid milled internals are loose. My concern about this is long-term durability, because when there is excess play, when you have a pin which is undersized going through an oversized hole, it puts the pin into excess shear load, and eventually what happens with daily wear and tear is the excess shear load on the pin causes it to fail, and therefore of course the clasp opens, the mill clasp breaks, and then the piece drops on the ground and gets damaged. That's the concern. That's why I'm always so critical of excess play with regards to the interference fits of the pins, left hand, centre and right hand pinch. I always test them, because this kind of sloppy play, eventually what happens is the excess shear load causes a pin to fail, and the clasp fails, the piece drops on the ground. That's the reason why I have to be negative about it. With regards to the finishing, beautiful lustre to the top side, underside and flanks, no sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, so it doesn't feel sharp, that's good. Centre section has been deburred very well, doesn't have any sharp corners, that's good. So, in terms of the lustre, it's beautiful. Beautiful fine grained satin finishing to it. I like that there's no sharp edges to it, no sharp corners. Finishing is good, they just need to tighten up the tolerances of the hinge pins. Now let's look at the case back in detail. So, solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, and it's a forged case back which has been hydraulically pressed, and it has a matte bead blasted background and satin finish to the embossing. Now I want to give due credit to Nezumi here, because they could have engraved the case back, and when you have this depth of embossing, if you engrave a case back, what happens is the engraving is sharp, and therefore it diminishes the comfort level and the feel good factor, because it feels rough and scratchy against the wrist. The benefit of this being a forged case back which is hydraulically pressed is there is no sharp edges to the 3D embossing. So Nezumi text logo is very aesthetically pleasing. It's deeply embossed, but also it's nice and smooth. So this is good. I like that it's a forged case back. The circumference is concentric CNC lathe tool machines, beautiful lustre to it, and also engraved with the specification and reference number of the piece. The milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well, no sharp edges, and the benefit of this being VK63 powered is it's a very low profile forged case back. It's not too thick, it's not a bubble back case back as one gets with automatic pieces, so I like it. Benefits of the case back being flat rather than being bubble back is this piece is only 12.8, which is good for a 40mm. The underside to the head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, beautiful lustre to the CNC lathe tool machining, and the undercuts to the flanks have been deburred very well, nice large chamfers. So tips of the lugs have bevels, which is good, they delete the sharp corners to the 4 tips, and I'm pleased to see quick release stainless steel spring bars used rather than standard stainless steel spring bars, because that negates the need for a spring bar tool if you want to exchange this Jubilee style bracelet for an alternative strap. So quality of the finishing to the head of the piece and the case back is excellent, and the end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece. They just need to tighten up the tolerances, the interference fits between the spring bar going through the end link in the Jubilee style bracelet. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now on a positive note, you can see this comes on a very long bracelet which would fit up to a very large 9-inch wrist size. So, to clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side to size this bracelet down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size, and there are enough additional links to size this up to a maximum large 9-inch wrist size. Just a shame they didn't use the Perfection Personified 20 to 16 taper versus 20 to 18, but this is subjective. Some collectors might like the straight look of the bracelet versus tapered. Now, on a positive note, the curvature of the micro adjustment clasp is excellent, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. It's not too long, therefore it's not going to have overhang on a smaller 6 to 7-inch wrist. On a large 7 to 8-inch wrist, it looks correctly proportioned. Nice curvature to it. Doesn't have any sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks, and therefore it doesn't feel sharp when it moves up and down the wrist. Doesn't have any sharp corners or sharp edges. Profiling is very good. Doesn't look too thick, doesn't look too bulky, doesn't sit too proud from the wrist. I like the way it curves around, and it does give 10mm of on-the-fly adjustment, which is good. So let's look at the internals of it. As you can see, has a spring-loaded trigger which has push engraved, and it's recessed well. The internal mechanism is recessed internally, and therefore you're not going to accidentally depress the spring-loaded trigger with wrist pressure, and it's not going to accidentally deploy. So it has a ratcheting mechanism with 10mm of adjustment. Let's test the ratcheting mechanism. Nice, heavy, positive, loud, audible clicks. Feels solid, feels reliable and robust, and I like the heavy indexing of the ratcheting mechanism. So you have to press in the trigger, which is heavily sprung loaded, firmly with your index finger or thumb and pull the bracelet, and it will then deploy. Just bear with me, I'll do it. It's difficult with gloves on. Let's try it with my thumb. So let's push it in fully, and then I'll press it in with my index finger, I think is a better method. I'm going to have to take my glove off, because you really have to press it in with your thumbnail or fingernail firmly. It's heavily sprung loaded, so just bear with me. Easy to do without a glove. So when you press in the trigger firmly and then pull on the bracelet, it deploys smoothly. Then when you press it back in, it's got nice firm resistance to the spring-loaded ratcheting mechanism, so it clicks in with nice, heavy, loud, audible clicks. 10mm of micro adjustment is good. It's optimum, and I like the heavy spring-loaded trigger because you've really got to press it in hard with your index finger or thumb in order to get it to deploy. I'm not going to be critical of that because it's actually beneficial that wrist pressure against the trigger isn't going to accidentally make it deploy 10mm. That would be irritating. But you've really got to push it in firmly with nice, positive, heavy clicks. And when you deploy it, you have to press in the trigger firmly to get it to deploy. So I'm just going to test it a couple more times. Nice, heavy, loud, audible clicks. I like the way it sounds. I like the way it feels. Now, when it's on its minimum, the end of the bracelet doesn't feel sloppy, although it does have excess play in the links. It's actually side-to-side lateral play. It's correctly proportioned. The dimensions are correct. That's the point I'm making. And let's just check it when it's fully deployed. So just bear with me. I'll press it in firmly again with my index fingernail. So that's now fully deployed, and the bracelet is sloppy, as you can see, but the actual lateral side-to-side play of it is tight. So they've got the dimensions correct. The body internally is the correct dimension for the width of the bracelet. That's the point. So it doesn't have too much play with regards to the mechanism. It's just play caused by the sloppy bracelet. Works well. Clicks in with nice positive clicks. Sounds good, feels good. Deploys smoothly, but you really have to press it in hard with your index fingernail or thumbnail, but it's excellent. I like the proportions, the profiling of it, the curvature. It's not too thick and bulky, not too wide, and one has to appreciate it's a 20-18. Again, this is the reason why I think this would look better with the Perfection Personified 20-16 taper, because to clarify, this tapers from 20-18, and the negative is with an 18 end of the bracelet, of course, this micro adjustment clasp now has to be wider than 18 to accommodate the 18mm width. If this were 20-16, the Perfection Personified taper, this would only have to house a 16mm bracelet versus 18. That would reduce the width of this micro adjustment clasp, and of course it would look more aesthetically pleasing because the clasp does look wide due to the 20-18 taper. 20-16 would be better. The thickness would be similar, curvature would be similar, wouldn't be too thick, wouldn't be too long, but the benefit would be the clasp would be slimmer, aesthetically more pleasing. This is again why I say Perfection Personified 20-16 on a 40 head of the piece is the industry standard for good reason. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So this uses X1 Super Lume Nova. In daylight it's got a patina tone, and which looks rather like patinated tritium lume, which was used in the 1970s, but X1 of course doesn't patinate, and it does have a similar peach tone to it, or patina tone to it, so visually it does look aesthetically pleasing. It gives the piece a vintage aesthetic. Perfect colour tone match in daylight. It looks peach tone or patina tone on the dial and hands, so the colour tone match is good. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers of X1 Super Lume Nova on the dial, on the large Arabic numerals, and also the hands. Now, in terms of application, it looks even. There is room for improvements with regards to the potency of the exciter of the X1. In terms of performance, it's similar performance to BGW9, which is blue, and similar performance to C3, which is green. X1 has a whiter tone to it. Now, I think they've applied more layers to the hands, as you can see, because the potency of the exciter isn't as bright on the printed Arabic numerals on the dial. Now, I'm not going to be critical of the absence of Arabic numerals at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, because of course we have the subdials at 9, 6 and 3, and therefore one has to accept the absence of the Arabic numerals there, and also the portions of the 10, 2, and also the other Arabic numerals at 8 and 4 are partially cut off, but that's just the way it is with 3 subdials. But I think they could apply more layers on the Arabic numerals to increase the potency of the exciter, because I think what we're looking at is 5 to 6, but clearly there's a larger area or larger plots applied to the hands, and therefore the potency of the exciter is better, as you can see. Now, I think they've missed an opportunity with regards to the bezel, because the bezel is engraved with the Arabic numerals and the hour markers, but there's no lume on the bezel. And this would look far better, and it would give better performance if the bezel insert was engraved and inlaid with X1 superlume nova, because in the dark you can't see the second time zone, and that's the purpose of a 12-hour bezel. You can use it rather like a GMT piece to time a second time zone. And of course, without any lume on the bezel, on the 12 Arabic numerals and the hour markers, you don't get the benefits of being able to use the bezel in the dark to read a second time zone. So it's a shame, really, they didn't lume the bezel. It's a production cost-cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece, and I think it's a production cost-cutting measure too far. So what we need here is more layers on the Arabic numerals on the dial, and also I'd like to see a V2 version with a fully loomed bezel insert. That would enhance the piece. Performance is okay, but there's room for improvement with regards to Arabic numerals. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So you'll all be familiar with the Seiko calibre VK63 Mecha Quartz. It's a reliable, well-proven Mecha Quartz calibre made in Japan, and it's been in service or in production since 2014. So at this stage in 2025, its reliability is unquestionably well proven. No reliability issues whatsoever. Build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are excellent. It is a very reliable Mecha Quartz calibre and the correct choice for a piece like this with 3 subdials at 9, 6 and 3. It has 0 joules, it has hacking, quick set date complication, and of course we don't get the benefit of that because there is no date window at 4 o'clock. Subjectively, as I've detailed, some collectors would be critical of that. They would say the VK63 supports a date complication, why not use it? But however, some collectors prefer the absence of a date complication because the dial is symmetrical versus asymmetrical. It's nice and clean with 3 subdials without a date window. Quick set date complication unfortunately means we have a phantom date setting position, so that there are 2 clicks on the crown and you can feel the quick set complication, the date clicking over in the first position. That's something to be mindful of if you dislike phantom date setting positions. 3-year battery life is good. Now, to clarify, the 3-year battery life of the VK63 is based upon you using the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. However, in reality, you're not going to be using the chronograph complication for anything like 60 minutes per day. Therefore, the 3-year battery life really is the minimum. It's nothing unusual for a VK63 to have a 4, 5 or even 6-year battery life if you do not use the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. Stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per day. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month. That is better than plus or minus 1 second per day accuracy. Outstanding. I can confirm that this one is running consistently at 0 seconds per day. Perfect accuracy. Plus or minus 0. So plus or minus 20 per month is excellent accuracy. 3-year battery life, which in reality is 4, 5 or even 6 years, is excellent. Potentially you could purchase this piece and wear it for 5 or 6 years without needing to change the battery. That's the benefit of the VK63. It's reliable, it's well proven, it's a workhorse VK63 Mecha Quartz, and really 5 to 6 years battery life with 0 seconds per day accuracy is outstanding. Correct choice of Mecha Quartz for this piece. Now, subjectively, one could be critical and say, well, at €562 in the mid-tier, it is at the lower end of the mid-tier, 500 to 5,000 euro. It should have a higher grade of calibre, but one has to be realistic. This is €562. It's not made in China. It's assembled in Germany with German quality control and German regulation of the calibres they're using. Therefore, it's not viable to use a higher grade of movement. For example, the Solita SW510 would be a credible alternative. They could use the 510M, which is the manual 1 version. You're not going to see that at €562. Really, the VK63 is the only viable option for a microband which is based in Stockholm in Sweden and producing their watches in Germany rather than China. One has to appreciate assembly in Germany has a higher production cost than assembly in China. Quality control in Germany is higher and therefore that increases production costs versus lower quality control in China. That does add value to the piece, but it also adds production cost, and in order to produce this piece in Germany and retail it, to be viable, it has to be €562. That's just the reality of it. A higher grade of movement would be nice, but of course not really viable. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So we're looking at a mid-tier piece, €562. Difficult piece to weigh up because there are some positives and some negatives to it. What we're looking at here is an excellent quality head of the piece on a poor quality bracelet, and therefore it's hard to weigh it up as a piece overall because excellent head of the piece on a poor quality bracelet, the clasp is good. In terms of finishing, it's beautiful. Beautiful luster to it, no sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hairs, but really what lets this piece down overall is the sloppy end links, the play and the sloppy bracelet. So what we've got here is an excellent head of the piece and an excellent micro adjustment clasp, but let down by a sloppy bracelet with push pins, which are a production cost cutting measure versus screw pins. Really, they need a V2 version. They need to update the bracelet with screw pins and tighten up the tolerances of the sloppy end links and the sloppy bracelet. Then I would upgrade it to good quality and good value at €562, but as it stands I can only say it's okay quality and poor value. Disappointing. Now, as an alternative to this Jubilee style bracelet, one has to bear in mind that this piece is also available on a plethora of strap options. So yes, it is still worth buying at a lower price point on an alternative strap. So, for example, you could purchase this piece on a leather strap versus the Jubilee style bracelet, and of course that will reduce the price of the piece, and therefore I would upgrade it to good quality and good value at a lower price point. The other thing is, I think they need to lower the retail price point. I appreciate that this has a Jubilee style bracelet and it has a micro adjustment clasp. These things add production costs, but €562 is expensive for a VK63 Mecha Quartz, and this piece does face some stiff competition from other microbands within the mid-tier between €500 and €5,000. I appreciate it's at the lower end of the mid-tier at 562, but it's mid-tier nonetheless. It's not a €0 to €500 low-tier piece. This is also competing with Chinese-made pieces. Now, I appreciate the quality control isn't as rigorous, but however, they're using the VK63 at a much lower price point than €562. They're producing chronograph pieces. So Nezumi really need to lower the price point, even though it has a Jubilee style bracelet, even though it has a micro adjustment clasp. I think this piece needs to be below €400 in order to be competitive with other microbands, and they have to face the reality that Chinese brands are also using the VK63 and producing much lower retail price point pieces. 562 is expensive. They need to lower it below 400 to make it more viable, but it is worth purchasing it for the head of the piece on a strap versus the bracelet, but the bracelet really lets the piece down, and that downgrades it to okay quality and poor value. It's just a shame. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings with regards to the QC of the bracelet. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Nezumi Corbeau reference CQ4.202. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.